Welcome to another episode of Dari Demoga Uruka. Tasukete kudasai watashi wa podcast toshite tensei sarite kita. Or DEGARUTA for short.
Hey, everybody.
It's your hosts Xavier and Mike here with another episode, and we're going to be looking at three different books this particular episode. In our case, it will be, oh, crying out loud, I had this right on the tip of my fucking tongue as soon as I said it. Middle-aged businessman in another world,
We've got the lazy dungeon master.
And whatever Raptro found last week that he was kind of terrified to read. Or at least, I don't know.
Terrified to talk about.
You could be scared about it, I don't know, it sounds like an interesting book, and interesting,
But sometimes you look into the abyss and it breaks you, and all you have to do is laugh.
In another world without my wiener. Or in another world, but I have a wiener.
Help, I've been sent to another world with an infinite ammo revolver, and I must critically headshot the bad guy.
They're getting more and more specific. Like, the sweaty and horny fit slut who escaped from prison enforcement. Oh wait,
I'm sorry, what? Can you go slower with that title?
Just put that one back in the collection.
Let's see. That's not entirely Isekai. That's Jav. Anyway, so
Called hentai and it's still art.
Javier, you wanted to speak about the gamification of
Yes.
lit RPGs amongst the Japanese, and I can probably kind of put in points and counterpoints as to the Western examples that I've seen for gamification.
Gamification, for those of you who don't know, is basically the introduction of like video game mechanics into something in order to make something easier to understand, easier to process, or just easier to quantify. Some educational programs have found it easier to teach students by making a game out of it. You know, some people potty train their kids by, you say, check this out, nephew, here's a Cheerio, throw it in the toilet. Now shoot the Cheerio. Congratulations, now you're potty trained.
Nice.
Right. And gamification has become a major part of the Isekai trope in that, specifically from the Japanese, every Isekai seems to be extremely video game heavy.
Mm-hmm.
In that either you're sucked into a video game, the world itself has video game mechanics. Shield Hero sticks out in my mind because you actually have to go get experience points to level up. That is a thing that the townspeople are aware of, and they can quantify. They can pull up their own stats and see what their stats are and how much experience they need to level up. They have to go to a place to pick their job class when they hit their new job class when they hit the level cap.
I've seen examples of this happening in Western Isekai, like Verdian Gates Online. That is the most depressing fucking book I've ever read.
Right.
I've only managed to read the first fucking chapter, the first book of that series, because humanity is basically on the edge of extinction, and the only options are to either live out your days on this dying world that's about to be fucking nuked by an asteroid, or join an MMO called Verdian Gate Online and have your brain patterned into the game forever.
That's all.
And yeah, but going past that, there's a lot of gamifications in that as well, because it's essentially he's trying to retell the story of an MMO. Apocalypse Gate Online. Or no, is it just Apocalypse Gates? Yeah, it's just Apocalypse Gates. And a man wakes up. He realizes he's being told by an AI that, hey, your brain's been scanned. The company that held your brain scans went under, and the new one that owns your brain scan wants to turn your life into a battle royale. Have fun. And there's a lot of gamification in that, because it's a zombie world that's slowly going to hell. And he basically cheats. Because it's a life or death situation. He has to cheat and gamify things.
Right.
But back to you.
Yeah, but basically, it's most common in the Eastern Isekai genre just because. And I kept thinking about why is it everything is a video game, even when in games like Log Horizon or games where you're being pulled into a video game, it kind of makes sense. Like, even Overlord plays with it a little bit, but it actually seems like it's kind of subverting gamification in that it's he comes from an MMO, and a lot of the same MMO shit still applies, but it's not the same. You know, he talks about, you know, I have this much MP left, but there's no meter, there's no interface. It's just how much he understands how much magic power he intrinsically has left. But I started wondering, why is it we see that so much? And I thought about it for a couple days, and I think I finally came up with the reason for that. Typically, what I saw in Western Isekai is somebody just gets whisked away to a fantasy land. Or somewhere else. And there's no gamification, there's no menus, there's no experience points. You either kind of sink or swim. It's, you know, how well you can figure shit out. And I tried to figure out why that was. I said, okay, let's take this down to its most basic form. Character gets transported to a fantasy land. And somewhere around there, it kind of hit me in that fantasy is typically regarded as like a European fantasy. Like the fantasy genre almost exclusively means European fantasy.
Usually like Tolkien or
right.
Or
and that's kind of where it hit me. If you send a kid from now to a fantasy world, he's had exposure to probably Dungeons and Dragons, Tolkien through the movies or the books, Game of Thrones, and all sorts of fantasy novels to where they'll kind of understand where they are in the world and how to get by. Whereas a Japanese person, I don't know how well they reacted to Lord of the Rings personally. I'd have to look that information up. I'm posting that. So you're probably seeing visuals of that here in front post. But more likely, the first real meaningful encounters they had with fantasy was Dragon Quest.
Or Final Fantasy.
Or Final Fantasy, depending on which Final Fantasy they're playing. So it actually makes perfect sense why the entire world is experience points and levels and stats.
Quantifiable experience, essentially. You get a lot less with that in Western Isekai, but I have found examples of it. It usually pops up in fiction revolving around dungeon cores.
Right.
Or Westerners that have been transported to a MMO and they're trying to quantify rounds and stuff. Which usually revolves around... oh, for crying out loud. We are the worst researched fucking group ever in existence.
At least we don't have to sit there and explain why, as a real person, you should allow turn-based combat against the monsters.
Okay, so most of the MMOs, MMO-led RPGs I tend to read, they're based around Dark Age of Camelot, I've noticed. Not WoW. It's always usually around Dark Age of Camelot. Right. Which is a decently aged MMO for those who are Zoomers. Like Sir Raptro right. So anyway, most of the Western gamified isekai I've seen are based around Dark Age of Camelot. So that's not a bad lineage to have.
Yeah, no, I think one of the major things though is I think the reading audiences of Japan and America, or specifically like the West and East, are a bit different because like the reading audience for like light novels and stuff like that is much younger in the East than it is in the West.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Whereas in the West, it seems like it's old nerds.
Yeah, it's people who have been entrenched in this for so long that it's like books to them are books, and it's all like, oh, well, Isekai, this is just a derivative of Tolkien, and blah, 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 blah. Whereas in the East, it's essentially people coming into their own, or, you know, kids with a bit of spending money and so on and so forth. So the books may be geared to appeal to them more, to sell more.
Mm-hmm. And the gamification is not a bad thing, because it helps you quantify power levels, essentially. Like in Skeleton Knight in Another World, I liked that they helped quantify how powerful he is. Because it's one thing to be told, okay, well, he's able to kill this monster in one blow. But it's another to be able to say, okay, well, he killed this monster in one blow, and it took 100 men to kill a similar monster, and 17 people died.
The important thing with a gamification and introducing levels like that for your power scaling is to also scale your normal people so you know just how much more powerful your main character is compared to your side characters.
Mm-hmm.
In How Not to Summon a Demon Lord, Rem and the busty elf, I forget what her name is, it escapes me. They measured in at like level 40 and like level 42. Diablo goes and gets his level measured and he breaks the machine. And they were able to figure out eventually that he's level 150.
Ridiculous.
But I think it also helps a little bit because you get rid of floating power levels.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have this Dragon Ball Z, like, well, my numbers are big, but that doesn't matter because the numbers don't mean anything. Like, in Isekai, specifically, like, Japanese Isekais, those numbers mean everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because Goku is always as strong as he needs to be to win.
Mm-hmm.
Superman, in the same way, is as strong as he needs to be to win. But eventually you reach the point where you can't tell a compelling story that way. You can't raise stakes. You can't create stakes because, Goku's gonna win, so who cares?
Mm-hmm. Which is why I kind of like Overlord's approach to their gamification. I mean, he's an end-level character. He's an end-game character. But all the shackles get unleashed on him because in one book he summons like 30 extra more monsters than he actually expected, and he's kind of looking forward to that, and it helps you quantify. It helps you keep in mind that these overpowered isekai characters and how they quantify with everything else. I'm probably gonna say fucking quantify like 4 fucking times more.
Yeah,
it's fine.
But they always exist on an extremely strict rule set that once they leave the game or they enter the world, they tend to find that the rule set is kind of more along the lines of guidelines rather than being so strict.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In Overlord's game, it was you're allowed 100 total character levels, but it could be made up of anything you want, of all their job classes, of all their everything
within like racial and chosen jobs and whatnot.
Exactly. And that's how all their NPCs have like these extremely diversified power sets, because they've got 20 levels of this, 10 levels of this, 5 levels of this, 13 levels of this, racial bonus this, and he starts figuring out right around the time when the Ainz becomes evil arc, when the he invites everybody into the tomb and it becomes Dark Souls.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of shows that he's been experimenting with learning new skills, learning new techniques outside of his own job class, so now it doesn't matter that he's a sorcerer. He can pick up a sword and throw down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
as long as he summons it.
He fully gets around that by like doing like as a sorcerer summoning warrior armor and weapons.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
So
even,
he's
even then though, when he's fighting them in the arena, he's just going in there like bare chested with freaking pants and some kind of collar that I think gave him a strength boost, because he found out that through repetition, someone that doesn't have a quote unquote job class can learn techniques of that class.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like the one thing he can't do yet, or I don't know if it's happened in the books after I've read them, he can't learn martial arts yet.
Mm-mm. That hasn't happened yet, no.
But I think we've explored, gamification, as pretty far as we could go here without flat out talking about all these other books that we're not talking about.
All right, so let's go on with your book then, Xavier. Yours was Lazy Dungeon Master, yeah?
Yep. And this book, it has a lot of gamification in it. But it's not classic MMORPG gamification. It's strangely more like tower defense.
Yeah, like a dungeon core.
Right. Basically, we start off with our protagonist. His name is Keima Masuda, and he's basically just like passed the fuck out. He's sleeping. When all of a sudden he's floating in the air and he doesn't know why, and God is talking to him. He's like, hey, are you sleeping? Yeah, shut the fuck up. I'm God. Whatever. I'm trying to sleep. I just want to know if because you're about to be sent to another world, and do you want to do this job for me? Because if you do, I'll get you some cool shit. Well, I'm listening. Are you really listening, or are you just saying that? And God, is doing his whole spiel, and he's like, okay, tell you what. What's the one thing you've always wanted to do? If you agree to do this job for me, I'll make sure that it happens for you. I want to live a life where I don't have to work. You're going to a fantasy world that's like extremely low tech. You're going to have to work really hard to survive. No thanks, then. But dude, they have golems in this world. I know you've been researching golems in your world. Like, you mean those little model robot kits I was buying? Yeah, I gave up on those when I found out I couldn't build a robot maid to take care of me. Why can't they just have those pre-built? Because shit's a lot of hard work. Yeah, what am I doing about it?
1,500 pieces in a fucking Gundam kit. Oh.
Yeah, and finally God's like, oh, well, since you've been summoned already, somebody must have want you for some reason. Okay, so I'll talk to the next one. Okay, take care. Oh, but here, let me do you a solid. Let me make sure you can talk to people when you get there. Okay, bye. And he arrives in a white space, kind of like the Matrix, but just a pure white room, and there is a girl there, and she's kind of busty, and she has this long golden hair, and she kind of looks like she's 16, or 15 or 16, and she says, "That's it? That's all I got?"
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? Okay, it doesn't matter. The dungeon is full of bandits. I need you to go out there and kill them all. What?
Well, I mean, it sounds like it was a very important decision she just made.
You see, this girl introduces herself as Dungeon Core 695, and Keima decides that that's really hard to say, so he's just going to call her Rokuko, which is, the numbers 695 is a word.
Okay.
But she doesn't understand that. He introduces himself. She says that she's the Dungeon Core and the master of this dungeon, and that she summoned him by spinning the 1,000-point gotcha, hoping she could get a dragon to kill all these bandits that moved into her dungeon, and she got him. So he must be really powerful, so she needs him to get out there and kill the shit out of all of them. He's like,
No.
what? I'm not doing that. Like, what? You have to listen to me. No. And anyway, he introduces himself as, I'm Keima Masuda, you just call me Keima, and she starts saying his name because it's a strange name she's never heard before.
Mm-hmm.
And while saying Masuda, she accidentally says master. And all of a sudden, the dungeon interface registers Keima Masuda registered as dungeon master. Shit! No! Undo! But it's too late.
Way
He's
too
now
late.
officially the master of the dungeon and has absolute authority over it. He experiments with this by telling her to end every sentence with the word meow. And she starts saying meow at the end of every sentence, whether she wants to or not. He's like, I could abuse the shit out of this, but, I'm a gentleman, that's not me. He does have some nice feet, though, because that's his kink. He's into feet.
Goddamn foot fight.
9-volt in another world.
That sounds like a horror story.
Gamers.
So he looks at the bandits, and the bandits are just kind of hanging out. He's like, okay, so what's the situation here? He explains that the way the dungeon works is that the dungeon gains a passive premium currency called dungeon points. Everything is handled through dungeon points, or DP. Expansion, spawning monsters, placing traps, placing loot, all that shit is handled through DP. If you have intruders in there, you gain DP from them based on how strong they are. If they die in your dungeon, you get even more DP based on how strong they are. And if you manage to absorb their bodies and convert it into energy, even more DP.
Mm-hmm.
So, is this DP transferable?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
So, if you were to, like, say, meet a woman and be like, hey, baby, I want to give you the DP.
You technically, there's no rule that says you can't do it. It's just without a dungeon screen or permission to access the dungeon screen, she wouldn't be able to use it.
Yeah,
because later on in the series, he does he gets people that work under him. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so he looks at the situation and he's like, "How much DP do we have?" None. Okay, well, I guess we just sit here and wait to die then. Nice knowing you. Oh, by the way, if the dungeon core dies, he dies too.
Mm-hmm.
But she makes sure to let him know that, if the dungeon master dies, dungeon core's fine. So get out there and kill those bandits, please. No, I'm gonna lay down and take a nap. He lays down and he goes to sleep. He wakes up the next day and some adventurers have actually come to because this dungeon is actually a single cave with a dungeon core right in the middle, and the local guild has been using it to train local adventurers. So this is your first job. This is what a dungeon core looks like. 5 goblins are going to jump out of it. They're going to go grr. You're going to kill them. You're going to get some loot, and you're going to go home. It's your tutorial. She's a tutorial dungeon. And, well, bandits just sit there and outright murk these adventurers that come for their first quest, and they get a shit ton of DP for it. Like, okay, now he wakes up like, okay, now we can start doing stuff with this. So the first thing he does is he buys a bed and he buys a pillow because sleeping on the ground is bullshit.
And then he proceeds to sleep.
And then he goes back to sleep. He wakes up about 20 hours later, and they've generated enough DP, and he's like, okay, I have a plan now. Watch this. Because she's really pissed off because they don't know they're in a dungeon. So there's this giant basketball-shaped object that's really warm, and they're using it as a foot warmer. She's really fucking steamed about, them touching, basically putting their nasty feet on her heart. And he's like, check this out. Takes a chest, writes a note on the bottom of it, and then puts like this really nice steel helmet in it. And then sends it to the thieves, or the bandits. They're fucking perplexed. Like, what the fuck? Where did this have to come from? And the note basically says, hey, thanks for getting rid of those goblins for me. Hey, if you bring adventurers here or strong people and give me, kill them in here or offer me their corpses, I'll give you cool shit.
We'll give you these sick ass tickets that you can take to the prize counter.
For 4,000 tickets, you can get this spider ring.
You need 20,000 tickets to get the Thundercats action figure.
It's
But if
5
you
for a
get-
kazoo.
Yeah, but if you get 50,000 tickets, oh boy, you get that Thunder Tank. So, the bandits start, bringing people back and murking them in the dungeon and generating DP. They go and they fetch, hire more bandits to come in there. And he's like, and he wakes up. It's been like 20 hours since then. Oh, cool. They did exactly what I thought I'd do. Oh, look at all this DP we have. Awesome. Where the fuck did this goblin come from?
She summoned a goblin.
She summoned a goblin while he was asleep. So he gives her an absolute order that she's not allowed to spend DP without his permission first. She gets mad. The goblin just sort of hangs out in the corner because he's here now and he's got nowhere to go. He's like, if you throw the goblin out there now, they're going to beat the shit out of the dungeon core in retaliation, and we're going to die. Now we're stuck here with this fucking goblin. But that's okay. That's okay. I got this plan. So, he sits there and sends them another note and says, hey, thanks for bringing those bodies you found. Step outside the cave for a second. They all step outside. They hear a loud noise. They come in. All of a sudden, the cave is even bigger. There's like 2 additional rooms. And this goes on for a couple of days because he goes right back to sleep after that. And she's pissed off. She thinks that he's helping them because they're human and he's human and that's something humans would do.
No.
And he's like, he just looks at her and says, no, I'm going to kill every single one of these motherfuckers, but I'm also going to squeeze them dry for every single point I can get from them. And she is just baffled by this. And this kind of creates one of my first points of contention with the book. And when I first read it, this guy's moral compass is way the fuck out here, and it's to the point where, like, I don't know what this guy's about. I don't know what this guy's principles are. It's just, I'm gonna kill these guys. I don't know them, and I'm never going to know them. They seem like assholes, and I'm going to make them die.
Mm-hmm.
Also, people are being, innocent people are being killed because I asked them to, and I really don't care.
This dude sounds like the single best dungeon keeper player. Before EA fucking ruined the franchise, this would actually be like a winning strategy for that game.
Actually, it'd be a winning strategy in Dungeons, which is a German-made version, which wasn't that great, but sold enough to get better.
It doesn't have British Satan with you.
No.
Cracking jokes.
No.
Or in Dungeon Keeper 2, the weirdly sexualized S&M lady.
Oh, yes. Ah, yes, I remember those times. Those were good times back in the day.
Thanks, EA.
So, they're kidnapping people, bringing them back to the dungeon and killing them in the dungeon. He's getting more points for it. Finally, a group of, higher level adventurers show up. It's like, this is what I'm waiting for. Now, let's just see how these things play out. Because he's eating breakfast now. So he's awake. The adventurers manage to kill 5 of the bandits, and they get points for it, but the adventurers all get fucking murked. And they get a shit ton of points for that. So they add some more rooms. And all of a sudden the bandit leader goes back to town, comes back, he's got 17 guys with him, and a couple of slaves. Because slavery is allowed in this world.
Mm-hmm.
It brings back this lolly dog girl and this harpy prostitute.
So you're saying he's a man of taste?
He's a man of some kind of culture.
Not my taste, but they are tastes.
Yeah. So the lolly dog girl is basically just beaten and used as a housekeeper. Meanwhile, everybody just takes turns running trains on the harpy. And he sits there and goes, I really don't care. I really don't care. I'm not going to stick my neck out to save this person. But I also don't want to watch this. Because he can technically see everything that goes on in the dungeon from any angle he wants from the dungeon interface inside the master room where he is. So she asks Rokugo asks when he's going to fucking kill these guys. because she's fucking tired of having him inside the dungeon, and she's also really pissed that he keeps giving them shit. Like, think about it like this. I gave them the sword and the helmet and all this other shit. They went and they sold it. They can't sell the rooms. The rooms belong to us. They're just using them right now. And because she keeps saying that, spend all this points to summon goblins on him, he mistakenly thinks she has like a fucking thing for goblins. And that's why she summoned the one goblin, who she names Gobsky, because he needed a name. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, think about it like this. Suppose there's a limit on how many goblins you could put in a single room, and that's 10. Well, by having these 2 additional rooms, now you could summon 30. Like, holy shit, I never thought of that. I noticed.
So it looks like she gets more mana or like dungeon points just from having acres of land.
Right. The bigger her dungeon is, the more income she passively generates. And the thing is, you can actually expand the field to be above ground and outside your dungeon. So if these guys are like camped outside the cave, because you've expanded the dungeon's territory to outside the cave, it still counts. And I think the only limit is that you have to have shit underneath the ground, and the dungeon field just goes straight up. And that's how it works. So anyway, a couple days of this go by. And finally, she says, there's like 30 guys in like heavy plated armor on their way. And Kim's like, oh, they're here already. That's a little bit faster than I thought, but now's as good as any. Huh? Oh yeah, this is where the plan comes to an end. Watch. Basically what happened was the adventurers they had just murked were sent there to find out what happened to the newbies that went out there and never came back. Well, when the more experienced adventurers never came back, they sent like 30 heavy knights to go and figure out what the fuck is going down. And he's been sending them notes saying that here's how you use ambush tactics inside the dungeon, so to encourage them to do all their fighting inside the dungeon. It turns into a major brawl. All the bandits get killed. The harpy prostitute gets killed. And like 5 or 6 of the knights wind up killed as well. And rather than collect the dead, they just decide they're going to burn the bodies. That way, if somebody's in there that's still alive that's wounded, they ain't going to be alive very much longer.
Nice.
And this is where Kama grows a fucking conscience. The lolly dog girl's been hiding under the bed the whole time. And she's still alive. And as the place is burning, and he had to sit there and tell Rokuko not to take in the bodies because it would freak the fucking knights out and make her think the dungeon is evil.
Mm-hmm.
So we gotta let all this shit burn. He's told if he wants to save her, he has to jump out of the core and go save her. But he'll die if he does that. Like, can I just bring her in here? Like, you can't bring people in here. Like, but she's not a person. She's an item. And he then sits there and begins hypnotizing himself to convince himself that this isn't a person, this is an item. Not because she's a slave, though. As it turns out, the bandit leader was not sexual with this lolly dog girl at all. For some reason, he just kept her as a human pillow. And I don't know why. So he basically convinced himself that she's just a Dakimakura. And there's like 4 or 5 whole paragraphs of him convincing himself, telling himself she's just a Dakimakura, she's just an item. And it makes perfect sense because if a person who has an item dies in the dungeon, well, the item belongs to the dungeon then. And he manages to pull her into the master room. And Roku's like, how the hell did you do that? And he snaps himself out of it. And he says, it makes perfect sense that because a slave is considered an item or a tool, when the slave master dies, they become property of the dungeon, and you can pull an item into the master room. He says it's very important that she believes this, so that he doesn't have to hypnotize himself every single fucking time he wants to do this.
Mm-hmm.
winds up with a 13,000 DP from this entire ordeal. This is more than she's ever seen. Like a small fortune to her. And the first thing he does is once all the knights fucking clear out and they absorb the bodies and start cleaning up is he buys the magic spell Create Golem. And
from what I remember, this is the part where he just starts like abusing the fuck out of it.
Oh yeah. He gets a bunch of clay and he's like, aren't golems supposed to be made out of stone? I don't have any stone, so I made it out of clay. And like, golems aren't very good. They can only do simple things. And he ordered it to go around the mountain and start digging. And it did. And he didn't understand why she was giving him all this shit about it, because you have no idea how amazing that is. The most advanced robots in Japan at the time, if you want to tell them to go do something, you have to be extremely specific on where it is. You have to teach them how to walk to get there, how to maneuver the exact terrain, and if there's any differential in there from what you've told it and it falls over, it will just continue walking, unable to get itself back up. Where the golem will fucking knows where to go, can pick itself back up, and will just go where you tell it, regardless of conditions.
Which is extremely handy.
Right, but it's like, it can only do simple things. Well, that's when he starts getting some ideas, and he starts, he takes a plate, and he takes 3 pieces of clay and turns them into each one into golems, but they're arrows. So they're basically like arrow golems. And they attach him to this plate, and he gives one the order: you will rotate around this plate once every 60 seconds. Second one, you will rotate around this plate once every 60 minutes. Third one, you will rotate around this plate once every 12 hours. And he makes a clock.
Fucking, what a dick.
And he starts experimenting with what he can do, what he can use to make into a golem. He tries wood, fire. Fire didn't work out very well. Water worked fine, except when he put his hand into it, I guess it was like taking damage. I guess this is like I said, I didn't like this protagonist at first. I didn't like the story at first.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was like 2/3 of the way through it my first reading, and I'm like,
this guy's a huge cock. Holy shit.
There's potential here, but there's nothing here keeping me here. This book's got like 50 some odd pages left. I could still be surprised, but I doubt it. They're going to have to pull something really major if they want me to read more. And they do. I thoroughly recommend this series. I think it's odd that I'm stopping now. This is just because I want you to read this book.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm about to set a time code for when you can, if you don't care about spoilers, when to skip to the next section. Because I'm about to go through the rest of the book. Go to the time on your screen. Okay, that's long enough. So, he starts making a bunch of shit out of golems, and he eventually makes a fucking suit of power armor just to see if he could do it. And eventually he's like, I can make a suit of armor. That'd be like fucking Iron Man, it'd be great. And it's a golem, and I could do all this crazy shit. All I gotta do is tell each piece of it to move with me. That's it. Just follow my movements. But you can also give it other commands, such as run back here. So even if you're too injured to continue fighting, your armor will run you back to safety. He's like, should I create a suit, a suit that I wear over my clothes or under it? Eventually, he just decided that there's really no limit to what material he can use to make a golem, so he makes a cloth golem. And he basically turns his clothes into golems that assist his movements and basically give him enhanced strength and durability. He makes clothes for the lolly dog girl. He asks her what her name is, and she says Niku. So it's like, okay, your name is Niku. This creates problems for him down the road because that word actually means something in this world, and it's not good.
Oh no.
She's just never had a name before. That's just what everyone always called her. Anyway, he decides to go to the local town to register as an adventurer because that's the rule when you get isekai'd. You have to join the Adventurers Guild and do some quests. But this is also to gather some information on the local area because Rokuko doesn't know shit. She doesn't know shit that hasn't been told to her by her older sister, Dungeon Core 89. And we're going to meet her a little bit later. But she's the one that told her that just spend all your points on summoning goblins. There's really no need to expand your dungeon. And just sit there, just throw goblins at the problem until it goes away.
It turns out that she's been misleading her quite badly.
Yes, but no. It's one of those things where, given the situation she's in, where she's a one-room training dungeon, it makes sense, but it's one of those things that if one thing changes, that plan is no longer viable. It's one of those that everything has to stay completely static for that plan to keep working. Well, he does some quests because he finds there's a quest to investigate the cave, the training dungeon. And he's not high enough rank to get it. And they're kind of hesitant to give him advice because he registered the lolly girl as Niku, and he doesn't understand why he's getting dirty looks.
Oh no.
The reason for that is the word Niku locally means sex slave.
Oh no! Oh no!
So he's repeatedly saying he's not a lolicon. He just likes feet. I'm not a lolicon. I just like feet. You have some nice feet.
So
They'll
he
be
is
a lot better when you get older. Go on.
Well, I mean, he's a villain because he likes feet. He's a monster. This is one of the worst things that you could ever be. Taking a hardline stance right now on this shit.
Good job, my boy. We'll survive this isekai adventure. With you at our side, we'll take on any of these degenerates, and then we'll have elbows and armpits to lick for. I mean, anyway.
I'm sorry, what?
I just want to let you know that I've traveled, leagues across this fantasy world to tell you, Your Highness, that Nafe Dude sexually assaulted his sister.
Who?
Twitter memes aside. He finally levels up to the quest that he can take to where he can go investigate his own dungeon. But that quest is gone. So he freaks the fuck out and he heads back. On his way back, he remembers that he told her that if something happens, just summon 5 goblins and throw them at it. Throw it at him until they go away. Because he still has absolute authority over, she'll only throw 5 goblins at it and nothing else. So he has a nightmare about the dungeon core being destroyed by 2 rookie asshole adventurers and freaks the fuck out and runs back. He comes back and Rokuko's sitting outside the dungeon having tea with this taller, much older, bustier woman with white hair. This is her older sister. This is Dungeon Core 89, this also known as Haku. And she basically shows up and is like, thank you for getting rid of all those bandits here and taking care of my little sister. I really do appreciate it. Oh, by the way, can you and I have a fucking conversation over here for a second? Would you mind doing me a favor and renouncing your dungeon master, your title as dungeon master, and promptly killing yourself? That'd be great. No. I mean, it's not fair. It's bullshit. You're probably using your absolute authority to say some really fucked up shit, like doing lewd shit to her, making her take her clothes off, doing lewd, nasty things to her, or giving her, like, really fucked up orders, like slowly fall in love with me or marry me or some other shit. No, I thought about that, but I'm also not about that, It's, consent comes first. You know, if she's into me, she's into me, but it's got to be her choice. Oh, so you'll do shit with her if it's her call. Like,
Yeah.
why are you so angry? Nothing. He agrees to give up the absolute authority, but he's still going to be the dungeon master because he's kind of got a pretty sweet gig here because the futon that he bought to sleep on in the master room is way the fuck more comfortable than anything this world has to offer, and he's not going back to sleeping on a wooden planks with bed sheets on him. Not when the dungeon catalog has items known as like the godly pillow, the divine futon, and the other like there's the entire divine bed set.
Satan's own sleeping bag.
Yeah. So basically, Haku pretty much explains, about dungeon cores. That they're kind of all over the place. There's about 700 of them. She's taken a particular shine to Rokuko for some reason. Nobody knows why. Also, Haku's dungeon is called the Ivory Labyrinth, and it is located in the center of the capital of the Lavario Empire, which she also helped found.
Mm-hmm. So she's an old dungeon.
Yeah, she's a double digit. So they put a lot of stock on your number and what it means. Like the single digits are supposed to be the strongest dungeons of all. The double digits are also legendary.
Mm-hmm.
But her income is absurd, just from all the people that live in the capital.
She gets passive, from what I understand, she gets passive from all the people living there. The fact that there's a whole bunch of people. There's like the king there. There's like gods there. There's temples there. And isn't she like worshipped as a goddess?
She is. She's because she's also a legendary adventurer. She is worshipped as the goddess of adventurers. This comes up in one of the later books. There's also she's like the goddess of the empire. And there's two other deities. Like there's like a harvest deity, and it turns out it's just her.
Mm-hmm.
Because in this world, there's only really two gods. There's the god that he met, and then there's the dark god who creates the dungeons.
Mm-hmm.
And the god of light is constantly sending heroes to get isekai'd with cheat skills. To kill dungeon cores and become soldiers of God. Or they kind of go insane when they do. If they do smash dungeon cores, they get power boosts. Like, their cheat skills level up, and they can also acquire new cheat skills. So, Keima has no cheat skill. All he has is that he's really fucking good with Create Golem. Because everyone's like, you're not supposed to be able to do that with Create Golem. He's like, but it's working like that.
But it's just how it be sometimes.
Yeah. You also come to find out that the dungeon catalog itself, the rules of the dungeon, are very fluid. Features of the dungeon catalog and the dungeon interface appear to him when he's told about them. Just use this feature to check this out. What that feature wasn't there. Oh, there it is. That wasn't there before. And he experiments with that. He gives Rokuko food from Japan and tells her that it's something else than what it is, and then makes her buy that same item because it starts appearing in her dungeon interface. Because they each have their own, and it very much becomes her is affected by her perception. He gives her like a sweet roll or a cream roll and tells her it's a sweet roll. So she eats it, she loves it, and then buys one of her own. It's listed as sweet roll, but the cream roll pops out. Then he hands her, he tells her what he did, and then hands her like a red bean paste roll and tells her it's a jelly roll, and does the same thing. And he understands that basically, the more he learns, the more he experiences, the bigger his catalog is going to get. And that things aren't exactly as concrete as they would be. Okay, so Haku challenges him to a dungeon battle. He has no idea what the fuck she's on about. And basically said it's a way for dungeons to compete with each other, but it's also a way to wager DP. And she says that how this will work is I'm gonna give you 100,000 DP. The limit is 100,000 DP. And basically, we're gonna use space-time magic to connect the entrances to our 2 dungeons. And if I touch Rokuko's dungeon core, I win. If you touch my dummy core, you win. Also, if you win, I'll give you you get to keep everything you spent. Plus, I'll give you an extra 100,000. If you lose, you're gonna pay me back that 100,000 by working as an adventurer in my dungeons. Either as somebody going through exploring the dungeon, or as somebody fighting adventurers in the dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
Here you also find out that there's a lot of things about the dungeons that people take for granted that are all just total bullshit. It's all fake news. Like safe zones. They've purposely engineered or spread the rumor that a safe zone is a thing. They put a very specific magic item in this room, and then just order no monsters to go in there. And the reason is that, we can just put shit in there and kill everybody there, and who's gonna know? They'll sit there and they'll camp and they'll let their guard down, and who's gonna know?
Who will know? Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Because what everyone knows about dungeoning comes from this book called Intro to Dungeoneering. It's written by Haku.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really expensive book. So, the dungeon battle starts in 3 days. Kama learns that by digging out the rock, putting in hallways and rooms is a lot less expensive than if you're just sliding them into place. So, if he just wants to carve a room into a mountain, it's 10,000. If he already carves out the rock in the dirt, it's 5. And he starts coming in with cutting every fucking corner he can in order to maximize DP. And he builds this fucking dungeon with 3 or 4, I think it's 3 floors, including the first floor. Mm-hmm. And he fills it full of a lot of interesting traps. And this is when the battle starts. He basically wakes up just in time for the battle. He's kind of pissed off because he's been working the last couple of days. Mm-hmm. He hasn't had much time for sleep. So he's pissed. The dungeon battle starts. As it turns out, Haku's cheating like a motherfucker. The dungeon that she built to fight them, she conveniently placed in a place where lizardmen and minotaurs are known to be. It's like, hey, I can't help it if fucking monsters just happen to be there and move into my dungeon.
Can't help it.
Also, we had a recent robbery in my vault of legendary weapons. And, hey, isn't that axe looks pretty familiar. That's pretty common. Oh. Damn shame. Because if he loses, Rokuko gets to come to the capital to be with her. Mm-hmm. And while Kama's working off the debt.
Well, what a completely one-sided business transaction this is turning out to be.
She gave you the 100,000 DP. Apparently, you could do this just by touching, by a handshake. And it's kind of like that movie on In Time, where time is currency. Mm-hmm. But Haku instead says, we have to make out. This is how you've never exchanged DP before. This is just how it's done. And we have to be careful because we don't want any of it to leak out.
So this is where she makes it with her own, sister-daughter, right?
Yeah.
Ugh. I mean...
Oh, man.
Amazing, but ugh.
So anyway, the battle starts. Minotaurs and lizardmen and an army of golems charge in. And they're met by just an army of golems that Kama made. You could summon golems, but because like using DP, but because he could just make them, they're basically free. And they basically clear out all of the golems that are waiting there for him there. But what they don't understand is all of a sudden they're reading intruders inside their own dungeon. And all of a sudden, like, the intruders have already reached the end of the first floor. What? They find out that every single one of the golems was full of gray rats.
Oh.
And because the gray rats were summoned, they have control over them. The lizard man can't handle the rats. The minotaurs aren't nimble enough to handle the rats. So the goblins can kind of deal with it, but in some cases the fucking rats are overwhelming the goblins. So, like, put flamethrower traps on the floor 3, because in order to get to the core room, they still have to beat the dungeon boss, which is like a great red minotaur. So let's just focus on winning. Cheeky son of a bitch! I didn't know you could use rats like this. Well, they enter the entrance hall, and all of a sudden, one of the lizard men falls into a fucking pit trap and dies. See, all the traps that you can buy from the dungeon catalog are basically one use only.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a handful of traps there you can use like multiple times, but for the most part they're all like single use.
In this case, he cheated.
In this case, yeah, he cheated. As it turns out, what he's actually done, because she thinks these are like plates that are sensitive to weight, because she was seeing moments where goblins were going across them and getting across okay, but lizard men and minotaurs were falling to their deaths in these spike pits. And turns out he just made really flat, thin plate golems and just said, hey, when somebody steps on you, fall.
If you can tell someone step on you, fall. That's all you gotta do.
All you gotta do. So she gets to the end of the hall, and like half of her guys are dead. She's pissed. She gets, she goes down into the next floor, and it's a labyrinth, and she's fucking kind of livid now. It's like because she's very prideful. I'm known as the Ivory Labyrinth, and you're gonna use a fucking labyrinth on me? It's bullshit. Also, the auto mapper kind of makes it pointless. What she doesn't realize is that the walls are all golems on track wheels. So every now and again, the golems shift position to change the layout of the labyrinth. Also, he started experimenting with weapons he could make with his golem skill. So he takes an iron ingot and he makes a sword-shaped golem and says, now vibrate like a motherfucker when I swing you. And he makes a vibroblade. And he's like hacking through trees. Like, this is effectively a magic sword. Well, he makes like cheaper versions out of stone and gives them to the golems. And the golems are kicking the shit out of the minotaurs and the lizard men. They're still being overwhelmed because they're golems. They don't move great. But she's like, how could he afford all of this? Yes, this labyrinth trap here, this size, is expensive, and it's in the catalog. But everything else, the fucking plate traps upstairs, this, and now he's outfitting fucking golems with magic weapons. Eventually the rats get past the flamethrower traps because they have to turn off every now and again. Otherwise they melt and break. So eventually the rats figure out the pattern, and like 150 get past it. Of like the 300 that invaded. So they start clearing out the next floor. Finally she gets pissed because they manage to get to the end of the labyrinth. And we're almost to the part where this is where I fell in love with this book. And I immediately went and I bought more. 1 second. So anyway, she goes up the stairs and she's pissed to find out that the dungeon goes downstairs and then leads upstairs.
Uh-oh.
And at the end, there's just a door with a plaque at the end of the hall. And on the door, or on the plaque, there is a riddle. Because I bookmarked it, I'm going to read the riddle. And as one stops being shitty. Sorry about this. In the future, I'll have this prepped in advance.
We're just amazing at this stuff.
Oh, yeah, you know us, so real, all about that production. Okay, where we go, the riddle. Let's see. It says, the answer is simple. You mustn't think too hard about this. Please tell me how to split one silver coin between 3 people. And that's it. Aku laughs. She's like, this is easy. You know, a fucking silver coin splits into 100 copper. Okay, it's easy. You got 3 people. You give out 1 to each until, everyone has, 33, and the last person gets a 34th as payment for divvying out the coin. So she says into the microphone of her interface. So that's what it says to the door. And the floor drops out from under them, dropping them down to the first floor. All their lizard men are dead now. They only have 2 or 3 minotaurs left. And they've got 8 goblins left. It's like, what happened? I guess that was the wrong answer. And she's fucking furious about this. She's fucking pissed off. And she basically starts sending 1 monster at a time to the door and starts giving every single permutation of how you would divvy it up. Let a neutral third party have it. It becomes the collective property of the party. And it's all wrong. And she's losing her fucking mind. And you can see it's really getting to her. And Rokuko's like, that riddle, isn't that? And Game is like, yeah, that's the one you solved in 2 seconds. I don't get why she's having so much trouble with it. This is one of those riddles that is actually harder the smarter you are. And finally, one of her lackeys, who they actually describe as the least qualified person to answer this riddle, raises her hand. And see, I've got the passage right here. Misha, the pink-haired werecat, hesitantly raised her hand. Among the 5 retainers in the master room, she was the least suited to solving riddles. To put it simply, she was an airhead. Haku directed a bright, visibly angry smile towards her. What is it, Misha? I've already decided to destroy this door through righteous violence. Are you trying to get in my way? I would never dream of that. It's just, I was thinking maybe the answer to the riddle is just simple? Simple?
Overthinking.
What are you talking about, Misha? Oh, I see. Is it true that this is quite a simple trap at heart? It merely presents a question without an answer. No, that's not what I mean. It says right there at the start that the answer is simple, doesn't it? The air froze. No way. No, that'd be ridiculous. Jeez, Misha, what kind of idea is that? Seriously, Misha, that's just... Their voices were stiff and shaky. By this point, all the retainers were thinking that might actually be the right answer. The retainers and Haku herself, too, even Chloe. Chloe, I will give the riddle one more try. Understood. Haku gave the last answer herself, prepared for her heart to shatter if that was indeed the correct answer. The answer is simple. Ding! The door made a sound, signifying that it had been locked. Haku's heart shattered. The gate of wisdom slowly opened. Haku gathered her shattered heart together as best she could and tried peering through the door, but couldn't. Reason being, there was a solid wall on the other side of the door, and on that solid wall was a sign with "Under Construction" written on it. Haku's shattered heart exploded. That's what I'm like. I immediately went and I bought like the next 2 volumes. Like that. There it is. That, you magnificent son of a bitch. So the rats get down to the Minotaur, and the Minotaur breathes fire. You can't fight that. And Rokuko has the greatest idea. Like, if you chop a Minotaur's head off, it dies. You don't say. Well, how do we get our rats close enough to do that kind of damage when it breathes fire? I don't know. You could clog its nostrils up when it tries to breathe. All rats attack these positions. Go!
So, more dumb attacks.
So it's about to breathe fire, and rats lodge themselves in its nostrils and crawl down its throat and just sort of brace themselves until the Minotaur fucking suffocates and dies.
Oh.
So, as a result, the dungeon, the boss door opens, and because Haku's cheating, because Haku's pissed, Haku sends one of her retainers out to go and fight the rats with like this legendary 100 million DP spear that casts Flame Wall. What she doesn't know is that Kama thought they might cheat.
Mm-hmm.
And what he did was he had these glass bottles left over from all the mana potions he had to chug from all the golem making he had to do. So he made a golem that could fly, made entirely out of this glass. And all it did was it carried a rat, and he couldn't see it behind the wall of flame, and it just dropped it right on top of the dungeon core.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and it turned out that he moved Rokuko's core into one of the pitfall traps at the beginning.
Oh. Oh, what a dick.
That's great.
he doesn't tell her shit about the golems. He just lets her think that he's a fucking master fucking spender.
Mm-hmm.
Because his dungeon is way too expensive for his budget, but she can't bitch either because she was fucking cheating her ass off.
To go back to the riddle door, right?
Yeah.
Immediately I thought of have you ever played Fallout 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I forget where it is exactly on the map, but there's basically like a place with a bunch of super mutants, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just the entrance is covered in them. So your thought is, I'm gonna go around back, and I'm gonna go through like this giant fucking minefield, avoid all the shooting, all that, so on and so forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I don't know if I can post this image here, but immediately I thought of this fucking door is your fucking reward for avoiding all the mines.
Ah, yes,
and
the
all
funky door.
Yes.
Avoid all the mines, take them all out, walk over, maybe shoot a couple, open this fucking door, fuck you.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's essentially what the Dungeon Master did to this ivory dungeon. Oh.
I said, I fucking love this series. It gets better. You start to learn more about how the dungeon system works. He gets to meet the Dark God, and the Dark God is just a great guy. Like, hey, Kama, how's it going? We're having a party over here. You want to come out and hang out with us? I'm kind of in the middle of something. Sure, I'll talk to you later. No worries.
Oh, boy. This sounds like a really good book, though. So you definitely would suggest it.
Absolutely. They as far as a harem goes, they put a lot of hot girls around him, but he doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what he's about. It's very clear very quickly that Rokuko is into him, and they're very much pushing for them to get together. He eventually gets another slave because slaves can move in and out of the master room, and you can give them an order as far as being okay with the whole dungeon thing, and not to say anything about it. And he gets this really busty girl who, even if she wasn't a slave, she would still be loyal to this guy because of all the great food he's always feeding her. She just loves to eat. He basically says, hey, I can fuck the shit out of it if you want, get that whole virginity thing out of the way. And it can just be, sex for the sake of sex. We don't have to, we don't have to cuddle or go out anything, We can just have a good time. He's like, nah, I'm cool.
That's fine. I just want to sleep.
I just want to sleep.
Wow.
And like I said, the more he does to make life easier, so all he can do is focus on sleeping, the more shit gets dropped in his lap that he becomes responsible for.
He becomes a pope. He becomes a bigger dungeon master. He becomes a god.
He becomes the mayor of a fucking town.
So anyway, definitely check that out on, I would say,
check it out on Bookwalker. If it's available on Amazon, link will be down below.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's see. Moving on to Middle-Aged Businessman, Arise in Another World. This was an interesting thing, even though it is Shinzo bait. For Raptro's benefit, Shinzo bait is any book that does its best to try and promote breeding.
Yeah, to essentially we need to repopulate Japan.
Mm-hmm. And this is Shinzo bait. But it's still good Shinzo bait. So there's this huge motherfucker by the name of Onigawara. I will never be able to pronounce this. Onigawara Shozu. He works in an IT company. The IT company sucks. He's one of those guys that goes to work, comes back home, goes to sleep, and that's it. One night, it's raining. He's running through the rain, and he's this big, scary-looking motherfucker. Like, he makes The Undertaker look like a small guy. And he sees this woman.
He's a hoss among hosses.
Mm-hmm. He is a hoss among hosses. And he sees this woman staring up into the sky, getting herself soaked. He's like, what the hell? Why is this lady standing here? And she's just talking about how awesome existing is. And he offers her his umbrella and runs back to his house. Only to find out that she followed him home. So he invites her inside, and she immediately goes to shower. Also inviting him inside with her, but he doesn't take up on it. So he goes to get the room ready, so he gets some beers ready. He's thinking, well, maybe we can have a couple of drinks, but that might be taking advantage of her, I don't know. And then she comes out, and he goes in there, takes a shower, and she's out there already drinking. He's like, oh no, this is leading to one thing after another. Eventually she drinks so much that she actually kind of passes out. He's like, I really shouldn't do anything. So he picks her up and puts her to bed. It turns out that most of these things were tests. Because she is a goddess. And she promptly fricks the fuck out of him. So, 13 years pass. He is a middle manager now. The top middle manager of his IT company, the one that he basically worked himself in the ground into, and he has 3 daughters now. And he's about to go to work, and he goes outside, picks up the newspaper, notices outside the front gate of his house. There's a forest. There's like Fantasyland. He's like, well, maybe I'm just dreaming. I'll go back inside. Maybe I'll go back to normal once I go back inside. Meanwhile, his wife is trying to get the TV to work, and the TV won't work. So she tries using the remote, it doesn't work. And then he gets a text from one of his coworkers. asking where the hell his house is, asking where the hell he is. He looks at it. He's like, what are you talking about? And she says that the Onigawara house has been has disappeared. A newspaper guy threw a newspaper in and then was mystified as this house disappeared. And his 3 daughters are getting a little mystified because they all had plans before this big day. And there's a ring at the door, and he answers it, and he says, I'm not interested, and he immediately leaves. But then he pauses. He realizes that the person at the door may be important. So he goes and opens it, invites her inside, and it's a low-ranked goddess. She immediately goes into Dogeza mode, which is where they like the most supine position you can to like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to inform you.
Knees and face on the floor.
Yes. So, knees and face on the floor. I am so sorry to inform you, but your house has been transported to another world. It was the result of testing a new system of creating isekai protagonists, and it interacted with a high magical source, and inadvertently activated the old system of creating isekai protagonists. And it turns out that the wife, Shozo's wife, is the magical object that caused this whole thing to occur, because she's a level 1 goddess, while this poor goddess is a level 7. You get more powerful as your number decreases. So she's a goddess among goddesses. And this new goddess is like wondering why she's hanging with this scary brute of a man. And he straight up tells her, I don't blame you. I can understand. I can see when an employee's been sent to go to essentially to commit seppuku in front of their customer. It's not your fault. Just tell me what can be done. And the goddess says, well, the house has connections to the old world. You can deliver stuff to the lot and it will appear in his front yard. And it still has an internet connection, and it still has like phone connection, because he was able to get his messages from the other world. So there's a deal made that he can't tell anybody, and he shouldn't really interact with he really shouldn't interact with this fantasy world just while the goddess systems get this thing fixed up. However, it's going to take at least a year. Our man Shozo, he's like, that's terrible, but we'll deal with it. What should I do here? I'll be your slave. I'll go out and get work. I'll go work for you. He says, nonsense. I'm the dad here. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna go find a fucking job, and then I'm gonna go make somebody the greatest sales team in this fucking fantasy setting.
Oh my god!
Just then, his front door is attacked by a hellhound, and this is where it's revealed that the secret cheating skill was given to the house.
The house has a cheat skill, and
it's indestructible, so the hellhound can't break through this house. And he goes out to face this monster because fuck you. I'm the dad. I'm going to protect my kids. I'm going to protect my wife. I'm going to protect this useless goddess over here. And he slaps the fuck out of this hellhound.
Fucking A!
And this useless goddess is like, what? How is he so powerful? And Sylvia, his wife, explains that when a goddess sleeps with a human, she grants him some of her power. Well, it turns out that the goddess was sleeping with him every night for 13 fucking years. So he's essentially Superman because he's stooped Sylvia for 13 years.
Yeah! Fucking yeah!
Hell yeah.
But he's a technical pacifist, which means that he will not kill anything if he can help it, because even killing a bug makes him feel gross. But he's perfectly fine with slapping the shit out of things. So he slaps the shit out of this hellhound, and then he goes around his house to make sure that all the monsters have know what's up, and they can leave his fucking area. And they
The fucking video of the dude in the backyard barbecue just slapping the shit out of everybody there, and the cops come at him. He just slaps the line of cops.
Yeah,
That's what.
it's essentially that. And then he heads to town. He's trying to find a business that has a sales division, and this is a medieval town. So this is a really, really awkward position for him because he's a middle-aged man. He's 41 years old, and the only skill he really has, other than slapping the shit out of things, is sales. So he tries going to a merchant's guild. They don't really worry about sales there. So he goes to an adventurers guild. The most highest adventurers guild in town. It's the Gold Ass Adventurers Guild, and he discovers that they don't have a sales team because they don't need a sales team. All the government sends them all the contracts. All the quests that they need get done get sent to them immediately, and they don't have to worry about procuring sales. They're on top. They don't have to worry about this sort of stuff. And so at that point, Shoujo says he's going to essentially take them down a peg by... Oh, fuck's sakes. Take them down a peg by uplifting another guild just to surpass them. So he looks around town trying to find another down-luck guild, and he's walking by that merchant again, and he sees this young lady, this young elf girl, constantly bowing to this merchant, like begging him to give her a quest. So that way she could hand it off to an adventurer for him to hand it off. And he's looking at this. He's like, "This is a terrible sales technique. I love it. Let's go see what this adventurers guild is about." And there's only 4 people at this adventurers guild because it's built in an old house. And the only people there are a really, really boisterous cat girl, a Lamia girl that is constantly muttering to herself, the elf girl, and an old lady who is the guildmaster, who really doesn't want to be the guildmaster, but she's just there because it turns out the elf girl is her parents were the ones that ran the guild before her, and they died. And they're trying to keep this guild alive, just to keep their parents' memory alive. And Shozo, he goes to the old lady and he requests a job as the manager of sales, because that's all he knows. So he proceeds to change the game, as it were, after he gets the job. The way quests are given in this world is that the quest giver provides a commission. Usually about 20% of what they would pay the guild. I mean, the adventurer for fulfilling the quest. And a 10% header on top of that. So you got a 10% deposit. Now, if the quests don't get fulfilled, they keep the deposit, and the quest goes unfulfilled. And you can see where this causes a problem for adventuring guilds that are not as popular as they should be. So he flips the game around by just removing the commission, the first commission, because no, he removes the deposit, because he said that if you lowered the commission, that would essentially be a noose around your neck later. But removing the deposit, on the other hand, gives them a temporal heads up on every other guild in the area, because every other guild in the area has been charging deposits in order to take your quests. And just having no deposit creates value that no other guild can match for the moment. And so he goes back to that merchant that that poor elf girl was begging for a job, and essentially pitches to the guy saying, "Hey, listen, you don't have to give us a deposit. Just give us the quest, and we'll figure it out. Make sure you give us the quests that take a long ass time to do because we're restructuring." So they give him a quest that takes like 2 months to get. And then he has to figure out how he's going to increase the value yet still of the quest. Their fields are protected by a magical powder from a carnivorous butterfly's wings that only exists in jungle zones. And there's a goblin that managed to create a habitable zone for these creatures and turn them into a farm. And it turns out that they worked with Shozo's guild before. Which, unfortunately for him, it was in bad blood. At this point, he's trying to figure out how to get this goblin farmer to become an exclusive, and it turns out that there was a young man helping the goblin. The young man helping the goblin was the adventurer that was helping the farmer get rewards for the quests for getting these butterfly wings. It turns out that there was a problem with adventurers guilds just taking quests and then fulfilling them themselves without sending adventurers out. So it was made against the law for an adventurer and to be also the employee of an adventurer's guild. So adventurers are essentially contractors that can't be considered employees of these guilds. And this because the fact that the goblin farmer was an employee of the adventurers guild that Shozo's representing, he wasn't allowed to take part in the butterfly gathering quests. So he was essentially stiffed out of that. Eventually it comes to that he manages to convince the goblin to become an exclusive provider for these butterfly wings, so that way their chosen adventurers will be able to go and get these exclusive quests much faster than they would if you had to go all the way to the jungle zones. And eventually Shozo manages to get more business, and he realizes that he's starting to get a little too small. He's too small for his britches right now. So he proposes buying out another guild. And after more shenanigans, which I don't really want to go into right now, he manages to merge with another guild. A slightly more competent guild run by a very, very cute noble woman. I can't remember her fucking name, but she becomes the new guild master of the new merged guild, and they get more and more contracts from that point. It's a really good book, and it's interspersed with little chapters of revealing how powerful that Shozo and Sylvia's children are, because between chapters, that useless goddess was essentially turned into a tutor for the children. But because the fact that they're in a different world, Sylvia's chains keeping them from accessing their goddess powers broke. So all these little girls are starting to get goddess powers very, very quickly.
Oh no.
The oldest is capable of learning anything as quickly as possible. The middle-aged, I can't remember what she can do, but the youngest is invulnerable.
Don't you just hate it when your X gene activates?
Yeah.
So we've got Arcade and fucking Colossus.
Meanwhile, the youngest one she's like 8 years old. The next one is like 10 years old, and the last one is 13 years old.
The young X-Men.
Mm-hmm. They're very cute little stories to intermingle with the main product of the story. Also, Shozo slaps the fuck out of a dragon. And it also...
Why wouldn't you?
Because that caused a problem. Because he's not an adventurer and he's not allowed to do that, but he did. Because it was threatening a baby dragon, which ends up becoming a pet of the house. Because of course it does. Yeah, it's honestly a really great book.
I just like the idea of he slaps the shit out of a dragon. You can't do that. Really? You wanna rethink that?
But Shozo is essentially Superman in a really odd situation where he's a character that's not allowed to use violence, and he doesn't like using violence. So he's got super hearing. I don't think he's got the ability to. He might have the ability to see as far as he can. He hasn't shown the ability to fly. He ran 20 kilometers in about 20 was it 20 minutes? Yeah. So he's capable of running 60 kilometers an hour, or roughly 30 miles an hour-ish.
That's still really fucking good.
And he's a remarkable middle-aged man. Now, I call this Shinzo bait because he wins using the power of fatherhood. And I don't want to break... I don't want to spoil that any further because it's such a good little book. It's such a dumb concept, but dumb concepts are the ones that usually work out the best.
So you're not going to time code it? You're just going to say go read the book?
Just go read the book.
I'm sorry I couldn't do that. I had to talk about that moment because that moment made me want to read more.
Okay, so that finally leads us up to what Raptro had to read. Or, well, he didn't really have to, but called it upon himself.
The universe told me I must once I discovered it.
Oh, Lord. Here we go.
Summoned by the spheres.
Alright. Fuck. I don't know where to start. We'll start with the fucking Japanese name that I can't pronounce, but the rough translation is, my house is a magic power spot. Just by living there, I become the strongest in the world. That is... It's very similar in a lot of ways to Xavier's book, where it's like, dude creates a bunch of golems and he wants to be lazy. He's not, like, as lazy, but, yeah, his house is just a fucking magic spot. It is just brought into this fantasy world, because somebody needed power, so they summoned, what they call a dragon vein, from another world. The dragon vein just happened to be his house, because it was made of, like, old materials, and it had a really good life and all that. Yeah. It actually had, like, the entire middle post of it was made from a sakura tree that naturally grew there.
That is powerful magic right there.
Yeah. So his house is pulled, and everything in it is pulled, including him. And immediately he's like, I don't want to deal with this shit.
I mean, who would want to deal with having their whole house being fucking transplanted to another world? I can't think of anybody. Like, take me, not my house.
Yeah. So then he immediately hears shit going on outside. It's a bunch of young girls screaming, and there's, like, explosions and whatnot, and they get kind of close to his house. So he screams at them to shut the fuck up. Not knowing his magical power, creating a massive shockwave. And just making them piss themselves. I shit you not. There are so many people in this fucking series that piss themselves. It's not funny.
It sounds like the artist has a bit of a fetish issue.
Maybe. But yeah, no, and the girls were like, oh, please don't kill us, please don't kill us. We're trying to take your power and try and use it to kill this dragon. And the dragon's just flying in the air, and he screams at the dragon to shut the fuck up. The shockwave kills it. And it just plummets into the ground and like lands in his area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he just screams at the girls to leave his house alone, to just get the fuck off of his yard. and then he just goes back to sleep.
You no good harlots.
And by the time he wakes up from his slumber, there's a woman in his house whose name is Sakura. And he's like, okay, this is neat. I'm gonna go get food. She's like, I already made you food. Okay. And so they get to talking. Turns out that his house loves him so much, it made itself a physical form.
Nice. Oh wait, is this? I swear I've seen a manga of this where he fucks the house and the house grew and never leveled.
Yes. Every time he has sex with the house, it creates another floor. That happens later. But basically the dude's like, for right now, we need to figure out a food source. So he eats an apple and he takes the seeds and he plants it. He just plants all the seeds. The next day, there's a grove of fucking apple trees.
This will take some adjusting.
Yeah. Where the dragon fell into the ground and the apple trees grew, there are sometimes golden apples that are fucking gotcha skills. So he gets from the gotcha skill the ability to talk to dragons. And he hears dragons circling his house, basically saying, don't go there, it's a place of evil. And he screams at them to shut the fuck up in their tongue. And they're like, oh fuck, he heard us, and leave. The little witch girl, who turns out to be a princess from the nearby town, and is the one who summoned his house, she shows back up and she's like, thank you for defeating the dragon, it was gonna destroy the town, here's money. And he's like, I don't want your fucking money, leave my house alone. And she pisses herself again.
Oh.
Dragonborn, surely they'll leave your house alone if you become the Thane.
But before she leaves, she's like, oh, can you help us with the fucking wolf people? And he's like, no. And she just fucking leaves. But then the wolf people just show up and try and fuck with him. And he fucking just doesn't do anything, and they basically just bounce off his fucking house. It's just got so much fucking magical energy that for normal people who aren't strong enough, it will kill them just to be in the presence of it.
Oh, that's unfortunate. That's like magical radiation bullshit right there.
Yes. So he basically is like, I'm really fucking tired of dealing with these people. So he starts turning apple trees into golems.
Oh no.
Full-grown, fully mature apple trees. And he's like, you're gonna cut the apples, you're gonna store them in the house, and you're gonna fucking kill anything. And he just begins like, hey, shape golem. Oh, this is just a giant buff dude tree now with a scary mask face, and it activates as soon as somebody fucking uninvited comes on my property. and then the dragons come back, but they're flying too high for him to scream and kill.
Mm-hmm.
So he turns an apple tree into a fucking AA gun that just automatically fires.
This is great.
Goddamn dragons think they own the fucking skies. Get out of my airspace, you bastards!
Like, more and more shit goes on. The little witch girl is like, oh, we owe you so much. The wolf people are like, well, fuck, you're basically our god now. The dragons bring forth their legendary dragon to fight him because he killed, by accident, their previous king with a scream. Uh, and the more dragons he kills, the stronger he gets because he keeps eating the fucking golden apples.
Oh no.
It takes their dragon souls.
Yeah, and so like a little girl in all black shows up. She's like, "Oh, well, you can do this and you can do that," and he's like, "Oh, thanks for teaching me shit." And then she reappears later. She's in all white, and she's the fucking new king of the dragons, or one of the 4 legendary kings. And he just fucking basically makes a Gundam out of apple tree colors.
All right.
Oh, I'm down.
And the fight is so big between him and the fucking dragon that the fucking townspeople see it happening. And they're like, "Oh, he's here to protect us. He's our god now."
Oh no, you don't give faith. Oh, you don't.
And it's like, it's not a bad series. It's enjoyable, right? But it's just like fucking ridiculous.
He just scales right out of the fucking.
Yeah. Like, the dude fucking immediately kills like the fucking calamity dragon or whatever that's supposed to be wiping out towns. And he just kills it. He keeps fucking his house, and at one point he builds a castle out of his house because he has so many floors. He has so much money because people keep fucking giving it to him. Because of like, hey, he keeps killing big monsters, and the people of the town will come into the forest, take the monster corpses, and then like they'll send the princess to give him money. He befriends like the one fucking dragon king that shows up to fight him because he doesn't want to kill her, even though he's killed so many other things. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I can make you a staff out of my tail."
Oh.
And he's like, "Okay,
right.
fine." All right, fine. And so she does, and then he just breaks it.
Oh, what a dick.
And then she's like, "Fuck. I need to make a better staff. You have too much magical power." And so she does, and the first thing he does is points it at a grove of apple trees that aren't golems yet, and turns all of them into golems at the exact same time.
What this sounds more and more like is, what if Clint Eastwood from Gran Torino got isekai'd?
Basically, like, he doesn't really want to leave his house, and he's really getting tired of more and more people showing up to like fucking
worship him or gives him stuff or fuck with him.
There's an entire race of like battle bunny women.
Amazing.
Who are enemies with the wolf people, but because the wolf people have become subservient to this guy, the battle bunnies show up and are immediately taken out by the auto defense systems that aren't the fucking golems. And he learns like, "Oh, I can put my mana in things and change them, right?" So he takes like one of the Calamity Dragon's scales and just turns it into like a fucking spiral dagger and yeets it at a monster, killing it so bad that it fucking explodes.
Damn, he killed the shit out of it.
It explodes so bad, and I fucking remember the exact phrasing in the book. But the princess is coming, and she's covered in blood.
Oh no. Oh.
It's, God, it's not like, it's not good, but it's enjoyable garbage. It's junk food.
Oh, this sounds like enjoyable garbage.
It is, like, once you get past all the people pissing themselves and the fact that a harem basically surrounds him because he is just exuding so much big dick energy. And the house is basically yandere. I forgot that because it's like, I don't ever want you to live anywhere else but here.
Oh.
Right? You've lived here all your life. Everyone else is dead who lived here. You are my master. You are supposed to live here. A house is nothing without a master.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so the house is perfectly fine with him just staying there, and it's like, it cooks him meals every day. And all of the food that was transported with him, and all of the apples he grows, are so high in magical power that if normal people eat them, they will outright die because it poisons their system.
Now this does raise some questions, because I'm overthinking this because I'm an asshole. So if he knocks up his house, does she give birth to a human child, or does a shed mysteriously pop up in the backyard?
Okay, no, there is a shed that just pops up in the backyard after they do it once. But
son!
no, it's all just floors to his house that she doesn't give birth. She expands. Yeah. But at the same time, it's a hive mind because the floors themselves are sentient, but cannot take physical form.
They're not old enough yet.
No.
We are the floor.
So, by the time the Battle Bunnies are introduced, he's given, land in the city to create a shop, which he does, to sell apple juice. Which is highly watered down. It's basically water with apple extract.
Right.
But it's enough to immediately revive people from near death.
So he's got homeopathic potion industry there.
Yes.
Oh.
And his house is so full of money and apples that they're like, we're gonna put 20 fucking floors under the ground and fill it with money and apples.
Don't go to the apothecary. You know that high potions cause autism, right?
God.
I read that on a scroll.
Oh my god.
So yeah, man repeatedly fucks his house. It gets bigger. He keeps making lollies piss themselves in front of him with his power. He isn't troubled by anything. He is a master craftsman because he can imagine shit in his mind and change it with mana. And it's just a dude who just wants to live in his house and be carefree. I don't know who this is aimed at. But oh god, it is some amazing junk food reading.
Oh my goodness, it does sound like some good fucking reading. Oh. And there's I was double checking the website where this book is hosted. 229 chapters.
Yeah.
We're gonna try and put a link in the down below.
Yeah, it's a web novel. You can go read it online. It's I
do remember this being adapted into a manga. So if you
want to read it that way, I don't think it's as far as the book series, because when I started reading this, I could not stop myself. It is just like, you read some shit and you have to reread it, and then just like, there's no way they escalate it further from there with whatever the fuck they're doing. At one point he sleeps with the Battle Bunnies, and then he goes back home, and the home's like, I'm fine with you having sex with them. I really am. But if you ever live with them, I'm going to murder them all.
Nice. That is terrifying.
Lay all the pipe you want, but you come home at the end of the day.
Yeah. The web novel version does have some illustrations. I don't know if they're from the manga or if the artist did them.
Oh my! I went to go look at the every site I can see with the manga version. The rating is like 0.1 star out of 5.
Yeah.
Because this just sounds like the greatest trash novel I've ever heard.
Oh, it fucking is. It is just like, you'll read it, and this is like, this was made by that fucking Twitter bot who's forced to watch like 1,000 hours of like Isekai, and this is what he and it's like, some of it just doesn't make sense. Plot points are just dropped. Shit, it does. Fuck you. Like, it's junk food. It's fucking McDonald's, but in reading form. And it's like, should you eat 46 Big Macs? No. Are you going to?
Hell yeah.
Probably.
You're gonna make a good attempt.
Give my best shot.
Local man dies after 487 chicken nuggets. That is the fucking
limit. That's the limit of that you're allowed to eat is 486.
But yeah, it's basically, that is this in fucking Isekai web novel form.
Nice.
I love the Twitter bot explanation. Dragons are overhead. protagonist goes outside, yells at dragons to shut up. The dragon dies.
Yeah. That is as fucking close as my brain can comprehend. Like, whoever wrote this is fucking galaxy brain of just, like, shitting words onto a page, and then magically they're rearranged into an isekai.
They could just be writing this on a cell phone, because you can
probably
write really fast on a cell phone over in Japan. Because it's just tick 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 tick.
Yeah, for a while, I don't know if it's still like that now, there was a whole industry of cell phone novels where you would subscribe, and then when the new chapter comes in, you get automatically texted the next chapter.
That's pretty rad.
So yeah, shit, thank you for bringing that to our attention, because I did recognize the house as soon as you said that you was able to have sex with it.
Yeah.
Because I do remember that manga was trash. Holy shit, it's amazing trash though.
Yeah. Oh no, it's truly outrageous.
We had a bit of a long show this week, but that's okay because we had 2 fantastic books and 1 fantastic garbage fire.
So anyway, let's tune in the next episode in roughly a fortnight. These have been your hosts, Xavier and Michael, and I guess now Raptro. Alright, so see you then.
See you next time.
Later, nerds.